everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. Got another interview for you today. I got to sit down with actress Ella Rouwen Chen. It was kind of cool because Ella didn't have a specific project to push, but she's been working on a lot of things. She's been getting her name out there. So we kind of had a nice discussion on careers and goals and where to go and how to get there and what you're working on, especially with last year, everything being turned on its head. And to make it even more interesting is she's from Shanghai, so there's a huge culture difference between the two countries. And that was interesting to explore in as much as she came over to a country where the language isn't even similar, the culture's totally different, to try to get into a really difficult career field. So it was a lot of fun talking to her. It was a really interesting interview. I hope you enjoy it. Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I'm sitting down with Ella Rouwen Chen, and you just told me the pronunciation, but did I get it?
Yes, you did.
Okay, great. How you doing, Ella?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. Thanks for coming on. This should be fun.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. So I understand that you are multi-talented. You moved to LA to become an actress. Is that right?
Well, I first came here to do college. So that was the
Okay.
main part. That was what prompted the move. But now, yes, I'm doing that part, just being an actress and being
Okay.
all the other things.
Awesome. So if it's okay with you, I like to go all the way back to the beginning. You
Mhm.
grew up in Shanghai, so I'm sure that's very interesting. A lot of Americans here don't have that experience of living in a foreign country, especially China and the US are not exactly the same thing. So, how was that experience compared to when you moved over?
Um, for me, I was there for like 18 years of my teenage life. Well, not 18 years of my teenage life, but just 18 years of my life. Um, it's a really different city from LA because I'm now in LA. I would say it's more similar to New York. The public transportation is very easy. Everything is kind of within reach. Whereas in LA, there is more of an event. If you're going to see a movie at AMC or if you're just going anywhere. And I will also say because I was younger when I was back home, I was spending most of my time at school. So that is also quite just a different stage of life compared to here. But I obviously love Shanghai. It's such a beautiful city. And it's very different from LA. I love LA as well, but there are two, like one is more suburban and one is just more like a metropolitan area. I love them both. It is my ideal world to be living in both cities simultaneously. Obviously, that's not possible, but I would love to be involved in both cities' life, and I kind of have been. Hopefully, by the time like when the pandemic is over, I'll be able to travel back and forth more often, and that would just be like the dream.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure it's been tough being stuck and not really any international traveling at all going on.
Mhm. Yeah, and
So, yep.
haven't seen my family for a while, so I can't wait for travel to be back and see my family.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Hopefully soon for you. It looks like
Yeah.
it's moving in that direction anyway.
Yes, it does. Hopefully, very soon.
Yeah. That was a good point you brought up about you moved here when you were 18. So when you lived in Shanghai, it was a totally different phase of your life because 18 is kind of one of those cutoff ages where it's like, okay, now you're an adult, things change. And you
Yeah.
said you came over for college, right?
Yeah.
And you moved to LA for college?
Yes, I went to UCLA.
Okay.
So yes, in LA.
Um, Kind of going back and forth a little bit. When you were growing up in Shanghai, did you have any interest in performing arts?
Yes, I did. I did a lot of dancing before. So that was what I was doing for many years of my life. And then I started to get into more of acting and theater. And then I was like, okay, I actually do want to study this in college because I want to do this for life. And that's why I applied to theater schools mainly. And then I got into UCLA, and here I am. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. So it was always part of the plan.
It wasn't a plan because mostly it was more of like hobbies. I did a lot of dancing in like Sunday, Saturday schools. And for me, it was when I did a summer program here actually at Connecticut. a 3-week program called American Literature and Theater. That's when I was like, oh, I actually can't imagine not doing theater or just acting like that, at that intensity. And that made me think, okay, this is something that I need to think about, that I maybe want to act upon. And I did. So,
Okay, that's cool. I like
mhm.
that. When it's a long-term interest, because it's a tough thing to get into, that it actually follows through for somebody like you. That's always very cool to hear.
Yes, because I didn't think it was possible. Like mainly because my parents are not. Well, my grandparents were kind of involved in the arts, but my parents are not involved in the arts at all. And then I was brought up thinking that more of the traditional path of like going to a good school, going to a good college, and then more of the quote unquote traditional majors. And then I realized maybe that's not for me. So there was the change then. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. You realized it before 20 years of punching a clock.
Yes. And I was very glad I could do that for college.
If you did go the other route, do you know what you would have studied? What that traditional major might have been?
My mom really wanted me to do like finance or economics, but I wasn't super great at math. I was okay, but I wasn't great. So then, like when I was discussing with my mom, I was like, maybe I would be miserable. and then, and then I was thinking about communication and history, but I think communication would be more likely. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Just curious. So when you moved here from Shanghai, did you have any English? Like, did you take English classes when you were growing up or anything like that?
I did. I went to a school called Shanghai Foreign Language School. It was a public school, but we had a very good foreign language education there. I was mainly on English, but I also spent a little bit of my time studying French, but now I've forgotten all of it. My school was built in 1963 by the government, actually, because they wanted to start develop diplomats at a young age. And a lot of actually the top Chinese diplomat officials now in China did graduate from my school. But I had just no brain for politics. I did like a Model United Nation conference, and I was like, I cannot think about what you guys are thinking about. So, like, I remember a student delegate wrote a note to the chair and be like, okay, maybe kill this person in my country and blame it on another country. I heard about that and I was like, that's not for
Yeah,
me.
it sounds like a whole other thing to get down into.
Yes.
I love the concept of that school, though.
Yes, there were like 13 or 7 schools like that in China in like around 1960s. Now there are a lot more, but they aren't really just focusing on like developing diplomats anymore. They're just kind of a school with a foreign language expertise.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
foreign language thing is the part that I find really interesting. And did you go there like ever since you were a kid for starting school, or was it more of like your teen years?
Well, actually, it was really interesting because my elementary school changed name and system. At first, the school was called it's a really stupid name, but it was called Baby English Elementary School or Primary School. And then in my second grade, it changed to Shanghai language. Oh, Shanghai Foreign Language Primary School.
Okay.
So that's when I was more exposed to the Shanghai Foreign Language School system. And then I went there for middle and high school. Yeah.
Okay, it's really interesting. And you're still fluent in Chinese, I would assume.
Yes, yes. I talk to my parents in that language and I read constantly in Mandarin. Yeah.
Okay, Mandarin. I didn't know if does Shanghai also have its own dialect?
Yes, we do. It's Shanghainese.
Okay.
It sounds very different from Mandarin. My friends from other parts of the country, when they go to Shanghai or when they move to Shanghai, they will kind of have to adjust listening to the dialect. Some of them still don't understand it after years living there. But nowadays, most Shanghainese, even older Shanghainese, can speak Mandarin fluently. That wasn't the case if you were like there 30, 40 years ago. But now Mandarin is widely acceptable. Well, that is the official language all across the nation. So
Hmm.
um, if you tell someone in Shanghai that you don't speak the dialect, they will adjust to Mandarin for you.
Yeah, I always found that really fascinating that there's Mandarin as like the national language of mainland China, but then a lot of the provinces, it would be provinces, right?
Yeah, provinces or cities.
Cities, okay. They kind of all have their own dialects, which I also thought was really interesting.
Yes, even sometimes within the city, different areas of the cities will have like a slightly varied accent, or not accent, dialect. So I kind of do imagine that like a Brooklyn accent might be slightly different from like a Manhattan or a Queens accent or a New Jersey, even though they're really close, but they have
Right.
a little bit of difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because the dialect goes a little bit further than just an accent, from my
Oh
understanding.
yes,
Obviously, I'm not
yes,
fluent, but
they sound very 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 different.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you're essentially trilingual.
Yes, but I'm not as good in Shanghainese because when I grew up, Shanghai was implementing the trying to get the Mandarin more popular phase. So in kindergarten, I was mainly speaking Mandarin, and then my parents were trying to like follow the school's policy and talk to me mainly in Mandarin. So even though I grew up around Shanghainese, that was the main language in school. So I will say I'm more fluent in Mandarin than in Shanghainese. And even
Okay.
my English is probably better than Shanghainese.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, one thing is because I knew you moved over for well around 18. I thought it was for acting, not for college. But there's almost no trace of an accent in your English, so it kind of makes sense that you were learning for so long.
Yes, but I also will say that when I was learning it, it was very confusing for a while. Sometimes we would learn like a British accent, and sometimes we would learn like an American accent. And then when I first came to America, I would be like, "Oh yes, that person's my schoolmate." And then people are like, "Are you from Britain?" I was like, "Oh no, that's just how I learned it." So I had a kind of a hybrid between these two languages, and then I would and then because I'm here for so long, well, not that long, but I've been here for a couple of years now, so I've adjusted more to American dialect or just the standard American way of saying things, and I also
Mhm.
did voice and speech in college, so that kind of also changed the way I sound. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Did you find when you first got here the courses, the English courses you were taking, did they prep you enough, or was it kind of like an awakening where you're like, oh man, I gotta catch up?
It's really weird. In schools, I was fine. Like in lectures, in classes, I was mainly fine. But it was really in, like when I went to theaters and movies, that's when I was like, I kind of want subtitles now. Like
Hmm.
not even in Chinese, just I kind of want some English subtitles now. Um, that was really shocking to me because I don't even now I don't fully understand why because you would think like in college the language was harder because it was more academic, but I had more difficulties going to see plays or movies when I first moved here.
It might have been because it was more academic that it made more sense because you always learned in an academic setting. But then when you get
Yeah.
out into slang, and especially a lot of movies are, the slang is enhanced to kind of give it that character and that tempo.
Yeah, and even maybe the pronunciation is more relaxed because when you learn English, everything is like, "Hello, my name is my
Yeah,
name
yeah,
is." Like it's really really slow and proper.
yeah.
But when
Nobody
you're
talks
actually
that
in
way.
America, it's nobody talks like that. Only like people on the news.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. This is fascinating. Okay, so you're in UCLA and you're taking some language study courses, a lot of theater courses,
I
right?
didn't take any language courses
Oh, I
when
thought you
I
said you did
arrived.
some language and
Oh no!
something.
Oh, I did language back home, but not a voice and speech. It was
Voice
part
and
of the
speech.
acting. Yeah, it was part of the acting training. Like
Oh,
everyone had
oh,
to
oh,
do
my
it.
mistake.
Yeah,
Okay.
no
Okay, so
worry at
that
all.
that was acting specific, not language specific.
Yes, true.
Okay. So what was your kind of move from studying acting to, did you do the traditional thing, found an agent and just started hitting the pavement?
Yes, well, like while I was in college, a lot of things were kind of moving already, which I was really glad. I had a lot of my own personal connections with people in LA or just people from back home. Actually, I wouldn't say a lot, but I had some. I don't want to be like, I have a lot of connections. So I just started to build more connections and started to be involved in projects. Some people have already graduated and then they were involved in projects and then they recommended me to audition for them. So that was kind of how I built my resume from there. And I think with that resume, that helped me to find like an agent and a manager, and yeah,
Okay. That's
in that way.
that's the part of Hollywood that as an outsider I always find very intimidating.
Yes, like I also found it very intimidating, like when I was in high school, middle school, and that's why I thought it was impossible. And then I realized, no, it's to some degree, it is kind of like a normal job. Like you're studying that area, and then you're exposed to people who are doing the same things with you, and then you build a connection. And then people are involved in their own projects and they need help from other people. And then you get on to their project. And when you have a project, you invite people over and then you have a resume. And then that looks kind of appealing, and then you look for agents or managers, and that is kind of like looking for jobs or like a more long-term job for quote unquote a more traditional kind of job or career path.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. The networking, and you're kind of always applying for jobs where some people get a job and they can just kind of ride it out for a long time. So I guess there's a some similarity, some differences. What
Yes.
was the how do you find the audition process, or has it, I mean, obviously with COVID it's changed, but when you first started?
When I first started, it was really intimidating for me because when I was in back home, like some because I also did a lot of directing. Even sometimes when I'm directing and choosing actors, when I'm on the other side of the table, I'm actually really, really nervous because I can't really imagine putting myself out there and just auditioning. And then you kind of like the anxiety and stuff was still kind of there, and it was also in person then. So now it's more mainly self tapes. So I would even get nervous being on the other side of the table. And then after doing it for a while, you kind of just get the hang of it. People want to see you do good. People don't want to see you fail. They want to find the perfect match for their projects as well. So um, that kind of helped me. That they want me to do better. They don't want to see me like forget my lines and just stand there awkwardly. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so you just mentioned something interesting. You're not only an actor, you also direct.
Yes. I did a lot of theater directings in college, but now I also write. The project I'm writing that I'm working on right now, I've kind of been doing the writing process for the past 8 months now. We could still do a couple of minor draft changes to make it to tighten it up and make it just pace better. But yes, I also write. I'm also co-producing the film, but I wouldn't say I'm a writer and a producer because I don't do that as often. I would say I'm a actor and director, and if I follow something up, it would be just I guess. Oh, sorry,
That's all right.
storyteller. My AirPods fall. I
Well,
have to
that's
get it.
it's interesting that you write, direct, kind of produce, act, but you primarily call yourself an actor. I understand that. Do you
Mhm.
find it easier to do any one of the things because you do the others?
Oh yes, absolutely. I've always heard that people who are really good actors, when they turn writers, they're really good writers because they know what good language feels to them as an actor. So they have that kind of radar on when they're writing. And I think the same applies to being a director. A lot of directors really are really intimidated when they talk to actors. They don't share the vocabularies that actors do. So when they're talking with actors on set, especially on a movie set or on a TV set where you have such a limited amount of time, they don't really know how to get the best performance out of actors. Whereas if you are an actor turned director, you do have the vocabulary to discuss with your actors. Maria Heller, who also graduated from UCLA, she was the director from What a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. She studied acting in college, and then she says she's not like never, but I remember she said something like she's not really intimidated talking with actors, and actors love working with her for that reason that they share the vocabulary. Um, and the director just doesn't just say like be sadder or like cry or like go faster. Sometimes go faster is a really good note, but like not just like the really superficial level of note, but like they go deeper on to like for a character development note that helps with the pacing or the arc of the character.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense. Have you
Mhm.
had the opportunity to direct something that you've written?
I did for like a really, really small project, but I'm normally just directing or just writing or writing and acting, but not directing or writing.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't done that. Maybe I will
There you go.
sometime
Something
in the
else to add to your
future.
resume. Yeah.
Yes.
Because I've always heard two schools of thought. Some people say if you write the project, you need to hand it off to a director because you're too close to it. And if things need to be changed, you might be too sensitive. But I've also heard the argument if you write it and you direct it, you know what you're looking for. You can save a lot of time. You can cut out all the extra like shooting days and things like that. So I didn't know if you had an opinion one way or the other.
Um, I see it both ways. For me, because I did when I direct, I mainly do theater directings, and for the writings I've done is actually mainly for film writing. So like I don't really do film direct, so I haven't merged these two yet. But if I do at some point, I do see the benefits because when you're writing it and then you can start to develop the visual languages when you're writing, that's really helpful. For me, because I was mainly doing theater directing, I don't find it as often in theater that people do writing and directing simultaneously. Even like Lin Manuel Miranda for Hamilton, he had a director for it. Um, so will say the collaboration between directors and playwrights happen more often in theater. Um, and it is sometimes really nice because you have a fresh set of eyes on the project and maybe the director can bring you like things that you didn't really think about when
Hmm.
you're writing. But I also think sometimes it gives writer a sense of freedom when they're writing that they know someone else has to bring it to life. They don't have to think about what it means on the page. They can just have the creative freedom to just write it, and then someone else has to figure it out.
That's a healthy way to look at it for sure. It kind of frees you
Yeah.
up in that way. Instead of like, oh, how would I pull that off if I had to direct it? You could just write your story.
Yes, I heard that from Paula Vogel, who's a famous playwright in the American theater industry. Yeah.
Okay. So you have I would guess more stage experience than screen just by the way you're talking.
I had more stage experience as a director. Yes,
How about
I
as an
would say
actor?
that. But as an actor, I will say I've done like fairly equally. Uh, yes, as a director, way more on stage, but as an actor, just more on the equal side of it. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Do you have a preference one way or the other?
I love them both. And I've been missing theater this year during the pandemic. For a while, I was like, oh my God, like I can't imagine going back to theater. But now that it's actually starting to come back, I'm like, oh, I actually can't wait to be back in the theater and doing a play again. But I also can't wait to be on set with more people because now, like, with the projects that I've kind of done in COVID, it's a really small set or it's a really small, like, people are really like trying to socially distance.
Hmm.
I can't wait for like to be back on a set with a lot of people and people are just kind of all doing something together and that feeling of collaboration has always been the reason that I'm like really drawn to theater and performance and film and television because everyone needs to collaborate on these things.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge collaboration to pull off any of these projects, any size. So I definitely see what you're saying there. Speaking of COVID, which for a long time I was trying not to, because I'm sure everyone is sick to death of talking about COVID, but because it affects your industry so heavily, how have you been keeping busy for the last year plus?
For me, I've been kind of like really refining my materials. I had a reel from like my previous projects, but during the pandemic, I have like done a new reel just for self tape setups, which casting directors really like nowadays. I also have been writing that short film, which for the past 8 months. So that took a lot of my time. So I will say these two main things: refining my materials and writing that short film.
Okay. Have you been doing any self tape auditions?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Have you
Siri
been
popped up
oh,
for some reason.
have you been doing any of the self-tape auditions? Yeah?
Yes, a lot.
Seems like you don't
Yeah.
like them too much.
Um, I miss connecting with person, and,
Mhm.
and sometimes I don't. I like the fun of doing the audition. I don't like the part of feeling like I have to worry about the noises on the street. That's the part I don't like. I actually like doing the audition, but when there's a truck driving by and I can't tell them to stop, or especially if you're in the middle of a really good take and then the truck goes by, and that's kind of like all everyone can hear. You're like, ah, that take went to waste.
That's an interesting point I didn't think of because in my head, again, I'm an outsider. I thought a self tape, you can do it 700 times if you wanted to. They have no idea. They're going to see the one you choose. So, but yeah, I guess like
Yes, you can, but like you have to do it 700 times, which is a lot of effort. And then you
you
kind of
never
get
know
sick
when
of
it's
it at the
perfect.
end of it.
Yeah, okay. I can see that
Sometimes you
too.
do, sometimes you don't. And when you don't, you're just like, ah, which one is the perfect one? I want to get the perfect one.
So, with all of this, have you also been kind of sharpening up on editing?
Ah, it's not that hard actually. You kind of just clip it and then you put the one you want, and then you put the slate, which is like, "Hi, my name's Ella Rouwen Chen," in front or in the end, depending on what the casting director wants. But it's not that hard. It's not like you have to get the timing of it. Like, okay, this moment connects so much, like so much better with that specific second rather than this. It's not that specific, so
Hmm.
I wouldn't say it's that hard. But I am very familiar with iMovie now, so.
There you go. Awesome. Well, I appreciate coming on. I don't want to eat up your whole day. It's very interesting to talk to you, and I have like a billion questions, but they're kind of all over the place. So, do you want to tell people where they can find more of you and maybe your socials online?
Yes. So my website is www.ellarowenchen.com, which is the spelling right here. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Ella Rouwen Chen. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate you coming on again, and I wish you the best of luck with everything. Hopefully, you can go see your family soon.
Yes, I hope so as well. Thank you so much, Adam, for having me.
I'd like to thank Ella one more time for coming on the show to talk to me. I wish her the best of luck in everything, of course. Everyone should, check her out online, look into some of her work. She's a really interesting person. Hope you enjoyed the interview. Please remember to like and subscribe. We have a lot more interviews coming your way, a lot more new movie coverage. Gonna get back to some older segments that we used to be doing. I just have been pushing everything else to the side to try to get these interviews out because these people are nice enough to take their time to come on and talk to us. We want to put them front and center, of course. Also, make sure you listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week wherever you get your podcasts. So Wizard Podcast can be found on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You get multiple monthly bonus shows. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, merchandise, and more. We love hearing feedback. Drop us a note in the comments, leaving us something on social media. All of our accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes. And on a more personal note, friend and I released a comic book. It's an ongoing series in January of this year. It's called Social Studies. You can find it at socialstudiescomic.com, all over social media, Social Studies Comic or Social Studies CB. It's a slice of life comedy comic about the high school experience, distorted all through the lens of the 90s cartoons that we grew up on and love. So check out Social Studies, socialstudiescomic.com. Thanks.